Rights attorney and Lawfare Project founder, Brooke Goldstein. Brooke, thanks very much for being here. I know you currently have a lawsuit against Columbia University and several other schools over anti-Semitism on their campuses. Tell us about that.
Thank you, Maria, for having me today and for covering this issue. Yes, we are representing several brave Jewish students across the country in groundbreaking lawsuits against these schools that have totally failed their Jewish students. They are refusing to enforce the student codes. If they wanted to clear the protesters, they could have done this weeks ago. They could have called in law enforcement. Our students also experienced a history of anti-Jewish discrimination at Columbia University, at Carnegie Mellon University, at Cooper Union. And the fact is that the schools have turned a blind eye to what is going on in their classrooms for decades. Another issue that we're tracking right now is the amount of foreign funding coming from states like Qatar, the #2 sponsor of Hamas terrorism. $1 billion a year is being spent on our college campuses to radicalize American youth, and we are now seeing the result of this.
So, yeah, I mean, certainly the Qataris have been sending money to U.S. universities. Tell us a little about what the average Jewish student is facing. I mean, in a practical sense, what kind of anti-Semitism are you referring to? What happened specifically?
Well, they're facing absolute terror. The president made a speech yesterday. Unfortunately, it was too little, too late. And he spoke about the history of allowing protest and freedom of assembly in this country. He also mentioned hate speech. But this is not about speech. This is about action. A Jewish student at UCLA was beaten into a coma. Another Jewish student at Columbia University had his hand broken. These schools have become Judenrein. They are segregated. They are preventing Jewish students from entering campus. And then obviously there's been a pattern of anti-Jewish discrimination, Title VI violations, the creation of an illegal, hostile environment on our campuses. And what I'm calling for, beyond obviously the equal protection of our clients, is an outright investigation by Congress and to follow the money. These protests are well organized, they are not spontaneous, and they are very well funded. Yep. Where is the money coming from?
Yeah, it's a great point that you make, and that is just disgusting what Jewish students have had to endure. Cheryl, you've got a breakdown of foreign money going into U.S. academia, right?
Maria, I'm so glad that she brought that up because, Brooke, I want to pinpoint something that you just mentioned. If you look at over the last 25 years, the foreign cash grants to colleges coming just from Middle Eastern countries, from Qatar, from Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Kuwait, that's $10.3 billion over 25 years. And then China, if you look at the same time period, 2.8 billion, excuse me, has come from China. How do we effectively find out what exactly that influence has bought these countries at our universities and colleges in the United States?
Well, as you know, Congress has subpoena power, and they have to continue with their investigations and move to dismantle this enormous subversive propaganda machine that we have been turning a blind eye to for the past 10+ years. The loopholes in our laws must be closed that are allowing funding coming in from hostile countries that are no doubt fomenting unrest, that have gone, for example, to fund Middle Eastern studies departments. They have gone to fund diversity, equity, inclusion departments and the so-called critical race theory. This is all the stuff that is undermining the fabric of American society. And the goal here is to foment unrest, as we can see, and really destroy this country from within.
Well, look, China, has been trying to steal intellectual property for decades and has been successful at stealing it. We saw indictments of, the chemistry department head at Harvard under the Trump administration because he was getting paid from China. So they're doing it in different ways. But yes, you're right. Lots of foreign countries are sending money to U.S. universities, and we're trying to understand what that has meant in terms of the influence on university leadership.
100%, and I'm so glad that you're exposing this issue, because a lot of people are characterizing these protests as though they're some sort of result of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. They are not. This is a decoy. The radicalization of our students has been happening for over a decade, precisely for this moment, so they can use what's happening in the Middle East as an excuse to riot, to engage in violence, to trespass, and to take over our institutes of higher learning.
All right. Well, let me get your take on these discussions underway among the Department of Justice officials about potential civil rights investigations following these anti-Israel protests. No probes have been announced yet, but Attorney General Merrick Garland was at the White House Wednesday to attend a meeting with what the administration claims is their president anti-Semitism task force, Brooke. Your thoughts on civil rights abuses here and what the DOJ can be doing?
Of course, we welcome these investigations. I mean, can you imagine if the campuses were overrun by mobs chanting death to blacks or death to the gays, or we don't want no Muslims, or chanting for the genocide of any other minority community besides the Jewish community? These investigations would have already taken place. I would also urge that there is an investigation into why the Department of Education and its Office of Civil Rights has been dragging its feet when it comes to civil rights complaints that we have been filing for over the past 5 years. We have an outstanding civil rights complaint against a Jewish student who graduated Columbia University 4 years ago that still has not concluded. You would think that if our investigation was dealt with 4 years ago, whether or not we'd be seeing what we're seeing now at Columbia University.
All right, Brooke, we'll keep following it, of course, and keep a spotlight on it. Thanks very much for being here this morning.